Damn You, Eggs Benedict is the third episode of the sixth season of 2.5 Men. This is directed by Sagal, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And this one starts off with Charlie trying to open a can with his mouth. He's trying to do some baking, and throughout the episode he does some cooking and baking, and it's quite nice to see. It's nice to see this different side of Charlie. We also get to see a different side of Alan, because Alan has a date with not one but two women, not at the same time. He is dating two women, which in itself is not the worst for dating in the early stages of what could become a relationship. It's not that uncommon to date more than one person. Personally, I don't like to do that, but I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing more than one person. Maybe sleeping with more than one person, though, perhaps. And Alan does put out on the first date with at least one of the women. We find this out a little later when they call him, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. Jake is then sitting with Charlie while Alan's out on his date, and Jake wants some of Charlie's beer, and Charlie says no. And I love Charlie's response when Jake said, "I thought you were cool," and Charlie replied, I absolutely love this, he replies, "You know what makes me cool? The fact that your opinion means less than squat to me." I love that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. And then the following morning, Charlie's making eggs. We have a brief moment with Berta. We had a night in there, and already Alan's decision to date multiple women becomes a problem. And as I said, I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with dating multiple people in the very early stages of dating, but Alan's moving very, very quickly. And one of the women phones him to ask him if they want to have a date tonight, but he's already got a date with the other woman. So he lies and says he's having father-son time with Jake. Charlie is then trying to make sauce, and then Alan is in bed with one of the women, and he starts to babble and is talking really, really quickly, and clearly something is up. And the woman asks him if he's seeing another woman. And I feel like this is the point where I feel like it's maybe not reasonable to one woman while you're also having physical relationships with the other woman. I think maybe it's a little bit too quickly for this to be acceptable. And meanwhile, while Alan's having this problem, Jake has a problem, but he doesn't really think it's a problem. Jake ends up calling Charlie. Charlie's in bed with a woman, and it's not a problem for Charlie because he just carries on until he's finished. But Jake's phoned him because he's drunk and needs his Uncle Charlie to pick him up. What's really ironic about this is that he got drunk off of the bribe money that Alan gave him. And it's so funny. Not funny, haha, but well, maybe a little funny, haha, that Alan would absolutely be appalled at Jake drinking, yet it was his money that got the alcohol. And it was kind of a suggestion from Charlie that gave Jake the ability to get the alcohol. So nobody's making the best decisions here. But in fairness, out of all of the three main characters, Charlie is the one who's making the most sensible decisions and saying the most sensible things, which is unusual, and I like it. We get a bit of a difference here. And I really like that. I also loved the scene where Charlie picked Jake up. I thought the performance was really great. I was convinced that Jake was drunk. Not blackout drunk, but certainly a little merry drunk. And he threw up maybe a few too many times for me to feel easy about. It was a little disturbing. Like most people, I don't like the sound of somebody throwing up. It was very effective. Very, very well done. And Alan then goes to the other woman's house because his theory was if one woman dumps him, he won't be alone. He'll have the other woman, which I guess is why people will often date multiple people when they're beginning to date people, because you don't know which one's going to work out. Time is of the essence. I think that that's generally reasonable, as long as you don't lie about it and deny it. And Alan, in that moment, thought, well, okay, this woman's dumped me. I'll go to the other woman because the other woman doesn't know that there's another woman. And it turns out that she is also dating somebody else. And Alan can't really get annoyed by that because he's doing the same thing, and a bit extreme, but he ends up getting tased, which, physical comedy, brilliant, John Cryer's amazing, but it was a little bit random. It did feel a little bit over the top, but nevertheless, it worked well enough. And then the penultimate scene is Alan looking horrendous from being tased, going into the bathroom where Jake is throwing up. Charlie rats him out immediately. And the final scene I think is really interesting. Because, well, it made me think about what could have been, and I can't really go into too much detail about this. Spoilers. I will in a moment. I'll give a spoiler warning in a moment because it I need to mention things that happen in future seasons, so I'll talk about that in a moment. But the final scene is the three of them on the deck. Charlie, not too bothered. Alan and Jake looking horrendous. And Charlie's date from earlier comes downstairs. All she wants is breakfast in bed. So Charlie makes her scrambled eggs. And his attempts to cook are finally paying off, as he can give her scrambled eggs after she gave him whatever it was that he wanted. And he's quite happy. And I thought it was a nice way to end things. It's a good episode. I think there are a lot of great points to this, some really great performances. I think it could beg the question, is it okay to date two people at once without telling the other person? Again, I think I don't like the idea of dating multiple people at once, just because I don't. Because I'm only going to go on a second date with somebody if I really like them. And if I really like them, I don't really want to be dating somebody else. But that's just a personal preference thing. I think if you're going on multiple dates in the early stages, multiple first dates, I guess, is the best thing to think of it, then I think that's okay. But as it progresses to 2, 3, 4 dates, you really need to pick somebody, basically. But Alan wanted to have somebody, I guess, waiting in the wings if one of them didn't work out, which is what we see here. But it does raise the question, is that an okay thing to do? And I think because Alan moved very quickly, I don't think it's an okay thing to do, but that's purely my opinion. And I kind of feel like the show is also suggesting that, because we see it fall apart very, very quickly. But I'd love to know if you have a strong opinion on that either way. Really great performance from Angus T. Jones as well. I thought it was a step up for Jake, getting a little bit older, not necessarily a little bit more mature, but certainly experiencing some more adult things. And Charlie was brilliant. Charlie was absolutely fantastic. So great episode, really thoroughly enjoyed it. Damn You Eggs Benedict is brilliant. And I will now, with a big spoiler warning, talk about what I was feeling when I saw that final scene. So this is a spoiler for things that happen at some point in the future. Not one specific episode, just what happens in the show in general. So a spoiler for, I guess, the rest of the show. What we had at the end was Alan and Jake and Charlie on the deck chairs out on the deck. And it kind of felt like what could have been if things continued this way, if Angus T. Jones was in it more prominently, and if Charlie had never left, to want for a better term. And it's kind of like when 2.5 men becomes 3 men. And it was kind of a glimpse of what the show could have been like. And it does make me wonder, would the show have gone on for 12 seasons had we not had those changes? Because maybe, I'd like to think it would have done. I'd like to think that it would have still been as funny. But maybe it would have become a little bit stale. Maybe we would have got all we could have done out of those characters, not Alan, of course. And maybe it wouldn't have lasted as long. Whereas when we have changes a couple of seasons' time, it throws things a little bit and mixes things up a bit and makes it a bit different and I guess a little bit more fresh. So had it become 3 men, it would have been interesting. But I don't know if it would have lasted as long. Who can tell? Who knows? Either way, I just thought that was really interesting, that it was kind of a glimpse of what could have been if there were not quite as many dramatic changes as we have over the coming seasons. But of course, we'll talk about those when we get there. And for now, I can confirm that I rather enjoyed Damn You Eggs Benedict.